let's get out to our playoff report. DJ Bean from What Chaos joins us, and he's looking fresh as all hell. What's up, DJ?
Hey, boys. I'm feeling amazing. How are you?
Feeling good.
Really good.
Playoff vibes are in the air here in Edmonton. The Oil are up 1-0 in the series. It was a shit stomping. There was a Donaire gun. Zach Hyman scored a hat trick. I mean, they kind of checked every box in game one from a vibes perspective.
Absolutely everything you want. And I give you credit, Tyler, because yesterday you noted that for those of us who made our Conn Smythe bet on Stuart Skinner, he was awesome in that game too. There's no way of knowing it if you look at the box score because they were doing whatever the fuck, do you swear? Whatever the shit they were doing at the end of that game. But Stu Skinner was awesome, and he didn't even need to be because they were putting up a million goals. Amazing. I'm thrilled. Everything I wanted and more.
I was texting with your co-host Pete Blackburn the other day, and he let me know that he had made a surprise for you with the Zach Hyman picture. I think we got it so we can flash it up to the people here as well. And I responded to Pete. I said, first the Bobbit shirt, now this. I said, I'm getting real sick of you guys making cooler Oilers shit than we at Oilers Nation do.
It's all we care about doing. Watching the Oilers, making Oilers things, amazing. And I'm also going broke on the Iceletics, the whatever the Oilers team store is, not the NHL Fanatics one, the actual Edmonton one.
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy, pal. The money that I am throwing at getting things shipped from Edmonton is outrageous right now, but I want it all. I am so bullish on the Oilers this year, not just because I'm an Oil man, but because A, they're awesome, and B, man, like the Pacific is just there for the taking. I love it so much. Whatever the hell happened in that 82nd game of the year where the Kings blew that lead, came back, had to force overtime. I was watching it. I actually had a social engagement and I went home because I just needed to watch the rest of that game. Needed to see how it ended. That may have given the Oilers, don't get mad at me, like a Stanley Cup. Truly. Because nobody that they could play in the first two rounds scared me at that point. I feel good about them against the Kings. This won't be a sweep, but I really feel very confident in this series, and I think that we got a little positive affirmation with game one. But from there, the Canucks are in a bad way right now, and they've been kind of bringing it to the Predators, and it's still 1-1. Like the Predators aren't even doing anything special. They're just blocking a bajillion shots. Neither of those two teams are great. So if the Oilers they still have a few things to figure out, but if they could play the way that they played on Monday or whenever game one was, no one's beaten them. I'm so bullish on them right now.
You're right. Like that last day of the season
changed everything, man.
Everything is just so crazy. It's like last year when Chicago decided they wanted to beat Calgary and Pittsburgh and just knock them out of the playoffs, and then Florida went to the Cup final. Like the ripple effect of it was nuts. But what are you expecting tonight from the game? How heavy do you think the Kings are going to come out in this one?
I think that what would tell us the most is if the Kings scored the first goal, what would happen from there? Because I think so much of why that became the ass kicking it did is because just in the neutral zone, the Kings couldn't do anything that they wanted to do, because when you're playing from behind, you can't just get into a 1-3-1 city. You actually have to trade chances a bit. And as we all know, the Oilers are the last team in the NHL with whom you should want to trade chances. They're going to win that game every single time. So that's another reason I like the Oilers so much. It's tough to come from behind against them unless they get stupid, which as Oilers fans, we can all say they are wont to do. They were not burned by the own goal or by Cody Cece's stick blowing up at the end of that game the other night, but those types of things can happen to the Oilers from time to time. I want to see what it looks like when it's a 2-1 game, when it's a 3-2 game. I think, a lot more confident in Stuart Skinner than a lot of people who don't watch the Oilers regularly are. I think that the Kings will play a bit of a stingier game and that it will be lower scoring. I don't think there's going to be, 11 goals scored in this game. Still confident, though, that the Oilers can win that game just because they do have the goaltending. And do I say they have the defense? Kind of, depending on the pair. I'd like to see Darnell Nurse become more of like a top 4 guy. But even in a closer game, I feel better about the Oilers. But I am very intrigued to see how they would handle it.
Yeah, I am. I'm with you in... I'm intrigued how the Oilers would handle a little bit of adversity in this series. Just because, again, if the Kings can at any point settle into their true 1-3-1, that's where the Oilers are going to have to really sort of dig deep here. But to be fair, we did see them in the last game of the regular season. They against the Kings, that is, sorry. They just turned on the Jets and didn't let LA get set up. Like, even if the Oilers were changing, and we saw it a little bit in game one, if Edmonton's in the middle of a line change and the D-man has it in the neutral zone, they were almost preferring, and this is rare for the Oilers, to hit the red line and dump it in and almost like give the puck back to the Kings, because it just meant you could then go forecheck, try to create a turnover, and you're not trying to attack against the 1-3-1 where the Kings can turn it back. So a little bit of adversity would be interesting. My favorite moment of that game, though, I mean, obviously the Zach Hyman hat trick, and him scoring that first goal, then doing the let's fucking go into the corner, him laughing and pointing at McDavid because of that ridiculous pass. It was nice to see that playoff Zach Hyman is just copy and paste regular season Zach Hyman.
Yeah, and it's funny to see, like, as I was opening that wonderful gift from Pete, 54 goals for Zach Hyman is kind of funny because no one will remember this, but he could have had 60. Like, once he hit 50 and the hit piece was put out about his parents being rich, he did maybe slow down a little bit. He ended up getting the OT winner the next game, but not that I would say this was a question or a concern with the Oilers at all, because if you're going to look to the last few games of the regular season, you might as well also look back to last postseason where he was a really good playoff performer. So I had no questions about Zach Hyman, but for him to come out firing the way that he did, scoring goals, not just from right in front of the net. I mean, one of them was from like 2 to 3 feet away from the net, which is, we're doing bingo cards on What Chaos. And we do have Zach Hyman from 3, which means, I don't know, from like the face-off circle or something like that. It wasn't necessarily a deep one from Zach Hyman, but not all just tapping it in right in front of the net. Doesn't matter, though. They don't ask how, they ask how many. I love Henrique on that line with them. I think that's fantastic. A question that's going to pop up specifically when it moves to LA is how the depth will match the depth, because Pierre-Luc Dubois, for as messy as he was with taking penalties, one of which led to an Oilers goal, if he ends up working his way, let's say, back up the lineup right now, it looks like they're going to have him on the third line tonight. The Kings were always supposed to have good forward depth. The question this year was just like, when will they each get going? And PLD in particular was such a mess, so hot and so cold. What happens if he gets going? Would you say that he took a little momentum off of getting a fake-ish goal from Darnell Nurse the other night? I would say no, but also if you're Pierre-Luc Dubois at this point, you'll take anything you could get. So the two things that I ask is what happens when it's a close game, and what happens when LA's top 3 lines are actually going and matching what Edmonton can put out there.
Super cliche, but first goal it's huge tonight, because if LA gets it, I think you're right, maybe see them start to feel themselves a little bit. If Edmonton gets it and the Talbot chants are coming out again in full force, I think it might be a little bit of like, oh boy, it's going to be another long night. I always think it's funny. They said almost 1,200 hats thrown onto the ice.
6% of the crowd.
6% of the crowd had hats on the ice, including me.
Now,
First time I've ever thrown a hat for a hat trick.
Now, you were paid 50 Canadian, right, to toss that?
Yeah, the guy next to me, like, straight up pulled the cash out of his wallet and was like, "This is yours if you throw that hat." And I was like, "Well, I feel like I can't say no to that."
Wow, that's amazing. We were at the Oilers Bruins game. We were, if anybody came up to us, Whatnuts, or what we call our fans or listeners, if Whatnuts came up to us, no questions asked, we gave them cash, but it was $1.
That's a great
I saw
bit.
you guys did that. Yeah.
And it got very awkward because a couple people recognized me from other stuff, and I thought they were doing it for What Chaos, and I was just like handing people money. It got very awkward very quickly, but that's what we go for with our program.
If we did that here, our pockets would be so heavy because we don't have cash.
Yeah, we'd be
It's
carrying
just
around bags of loonies.
Bags of loonies.
Oh, loonies would. Oh, yeah.
Okay, but now, DJ, the reasons for a trip up to Edmonton for you are adding. You doing that bit in Edmonton with a sack of loonies would be fucking hilarious.
The show that gives you loonies.
It's great.
That'd be fantastic.
Pro Shop Wars at downtown?
Pro Shop Wars in Edmonton would be crazy. That would be. We just did one with the Bruins, and Pete was overwhelmed because A, he's like, I already have every Bruins thing, and B, what am I going to do in a room surrounded by Bruins things? I'm going to want to get it all. So that was a little crazy. I would go nuts inside an Edmonton Oilers pro shop. I want to get to Edmonton so badly, man.
And we would love to have you. I want to make the case for it as best as I can. Before we let you go, I do want to ask you a question about Bruins Leafs game 3 tonight. Does the Bruins fan in you, are you a little bit worried after watching kind of the way Matthews performed and the way I'll say Toronto dodged a bullet in game 2, or do you still think the series is in Boston's control?
I still think that the ball should be in Boston's court. They are making a lot of changes tonight, which is very interesting. They're putting James Van Riemsdyk in the lineup. They're sitting Jacob Lauko. They're sitting Matt Grzelcyk, who has kind of struggled in the playoffs the last 3 years, but they're putting in Mason Lohrei, who is very untested. This will be his first playoff game. Obviously, they're rotating the goalies. They'll go back to Swayman, I assume. I like the goalie rotation thing for the Bruins. Historically, it hasn't necessarily yielded cups for teams, but I think it makes sense for them to do that. I'm not too worried if I'm the Bruins. I know that Bruins fans are, because this team is a worse version of the one that failed catastrophically in the first round last year. But I don't know if Max Domi is going to be as incredible as he was in game 2. I think that you can bet on Austin Matthews, or you should always assume that Austin Matthews is going to be as incredible as he was. But I think that if Boston gets a little more offense, and I think that putting James Van Riemsdyk in the lineup is at least taking a shot at doing that. He can for sure go completely invisible. And at this point of his career, just given his age and everything, maybe he might. But if you're trying to generate offense, stick a tall guy in the lineup, have him go to the front of the net, see what happens. You still have the vast advantage both in net and on D. I'm not too worried if I'm the Bruins, but if I am a Leafs fan, I'm at least feeling a shred of confidence that I don't normally feel, because I'd be a Leafs fan in that hypothetical.
Fair enough. Appreciate your time as always, DJ. We love having you on. Our chat loves you as well. You will be welcome in Edmonton when that day comes, man. Go Oil. Thanks for hopping on.
Subscribe to What Chaos if you have not. We appreciate you.
Yes, subscribe to What Chaos. It is a fantastic show. That is DJ Bean. He and Pete Blackburn do a hell of a show. I know a bunch of people in our chat were talking about it as well. Thanks, DJ. Talk to you later.
Thanks, boys.
See ya.
What's up, Nation citizens? If you like that video, then you need to be subscribed to the Oilers Nation YouTube. Podcasts, live shows, exclusive interviews, and analysis. Everything you need from your favorite voices at Oilers Nation. And you don't want to miss any of it, so hammer that subscribe button.